Well, here's another episode, the usual Wednesday episode, and we have a little more of the alien sex for you. Cue the music. Welcome to UFO report number 27, and yesterday I had the bonus episode for the Asgardia situation, and I just want to say something, just to be clear about Dr. Igor and the rest of the troops. And I have a link in the description to the interview that I alluded to in the last episode, because you really have to listen to what he's saying. And the reason why I have so much doubt in what's going on here and my sarcasm is because there are one or two things happening with Dr. Igor. The first one is, if you listen to his words in this particular interview and you play an interview from the past of other UFO cults, you have kind of the same words being used. That's one of my takes on Dr. Igor, is that he's building himself a cult, basically. And he's going to get money out of these people, no matter where they are, who believe in the fact that they need to leave this warlike planet to save the heavens. The other issue with Dr. Igor is where he's actually coming from, and not the perspective. I'm talking about where he's located. Dr. Igor is located in Moscow, in Russia. Now, for someone to claim that the earth is filled with a bunch of warmongering human beings, he is sitting in the middle of one of the countries that has a long-standing history of warmongering. As a matter of fact, that country is also a communist country that controls mostly everything that goes on around it. It is very difficult to think that Dr. Igor has so much clout with Vladimir Putin and the communist country of Russia that he is able to run rockshot and say that he's going to create a nation that's going to distance itself from where he lives. Those are my issues with Dr. Igor and the fact that he's putting this together in the middle of Russia. And to be honest, you would have to be a completely neutral country that has Dr. Igor living in it and basically be completely hands off with him. I'm sorry. I don't buy for 1 second that the Russian government is not behind Dr. Igor in any way, shape, or form. I just don't buy it. Listen, the idea is great, and like I said before, there are plenty other of UFO cults that have had the same idea and were giving people the same carrot in front of the people that died because of their beliefs and their need to leave this world behind. So the jury is still out. Like I said in the podcast yesterday, Dr. Igor is making a lot of strides in order to really set himself apart from just being a regular old flash in the pan by formally putting out there a structure for this government that he's saying is going to happen. Now, what's funny is that the reason why he selected the term nation, space nation, is because it doesn't have to be tied to any geographic location. But that apparently is going to make it difficult for him to get too far with the UN and other countries around the world. So I'm sure that with Vladimir Putin's blessing, he'll make some progress. I just would not throw caution to the wind with the Asgardians.
Hey, this is Jerome, and from planet Earth, you're listening to the UFO Buster radio show right here.
So the actual story that we're covering today has to do with Simon Parkes out of the UK. Now, Simon was a labor councillor, and in the US we say they're councilmen, for a town in the UK. And, the guy apparently had a great career serving one term. Apparently back in 2013, he went on an interview and he made some claims. Now, some of his history, of course, like I said, he was in politics in the UK. His biological mother actually worked for the British Secret Service, MI5, from 1965 to 1979. Simon's grandfather was also a British diplomat who worked the foreign arm of British intelligence, also known as MI6. Now, what happened with Simon Parkes was that in 2013, he had this interview. So Simon Parkes claimed that he made a soul agreement with an alien and had an affair with ETs. And this was covered in an interview he conducted in 2013. We actually have audio for that interview, which we'll play in a second. In 2015, Simon Parkes decided to quit the political game altogether and pursue, basically, some of us say is the paranormal, right? So among some of the things that he let out the bag in 2013 in that interview was that he was a lifelong experiencer of aliens, shadow people, elementals, UFOs. He came across the Mantis aliens, the reptilians. There were some that looked like felines, which you'll hear in the interview. He also came across the tall and short grays and other creatures that, he pretty much cannot identify. Some of the other things that he claimed in relation to extraterrestrials is the fact that he believes that Vladimir Putin was actually guided by the Nordics in his hostile takeover of the separatists in the Ukraine. So the Nordics apparently have some kind of an interest in the Ukraine. So check that out. So in his move into the paranormal, he's actually decided to assist people that are dealing with some of these situations. There's information here where he's been helping people who used to be involved with the Illuminati. He's actually been helping those that have been abducted by MyLab situations, helping them with their torture and their trauma. He's also been able to help them reintegrate any alternate personalities that they might have received from these MyLabs or from demonic possessions. So he has been a really busy guy when it comes to the paranormal, and a complete departure from the guy that little town in the UK knew as their councilman. So before we get any further, let's check out his interview. And the link is in the description to the full interview. I'm only going to have about 7 minutes of this here, but he has a whole lot more to say. So click on the link if you want to check it out. Let's go to the interview.
But one man who definitely believes in aliens is Labour councillor Simon Parkes. What's more, he claims he's having an affair with one, and after the story hit the headlines, he's now facing calls to quit.
Well, he joins us now, and we'll come to all of those calls in a moment after we've heard some of the story, which is remarkable, extraordinary, and starts before you were even born.
Well, first of all, can I say how pleased I am that you've invited me to your show. It's delightful to be here, live and on air.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, my first memories are very, very early.
So in the womb?
Yes.
And what? Because very few people, if any others that I've ever met, can remember that far back. So how come you can remember what was happening in the womb?
You're absolutely right. Most people can't remember. For some reason, I have a very good memory. I can't answer your question as to why I know, just that I do have a...
So what do you remember from
I have a very clear memory of a face, just a face, no real distinct features, and then suddenly being aware that there was much more to this world than I knew. It was a far wider spiritual experience, and then it just closed down, and that's all I remember.
And your first time you came face to face with an alien was when you were about sort of 6 to 8 months?
No, I would have come face to face with such a creature much earlier. The one you're referring to, I think, is a little bit later.
Okay, so when the first one then?
About 3 months old, 3 months to 4 months old.
And what does this alien look like? Because obviously we have images in our mind of the ones that we see, you know, in movies or that sort of image. What did your alien look like?
You're absolutely right. Hollywood's very good at putting out little creatures that people know as greys. This one researchers call a mantid, or in America it's referred to as a mantis. It's a green creature. It's about 7 foot tall, and this one wore a robe or a cloak, purple coloured. There we go, that's one of my drawings there.
Oh, okay.
And the creature literally reached into the cot that I was in. I remember it distinctly had wooden bars, green, yellow, red, blue, with like an abacus, painted abacus on the top. And this creature just reached and lifted me up, and then I was actually tilted over to look straight into its face.
So these are experiences, and you don't use the word abduction, but you use the word contact, because you are a willing subject, a willing participant. So from the moment there when you were obviously very young, and you were meeting them in their various guises, when was the first time that you believed that you had contact outside of your living environment? I want to say the word abducted, obviously, but when were you taken? When did you go?
That's a very incisive question. It's a very good question. In those early days, I wouldn't know they were aliens. To me, they were just things that came to visit me, and they were not distinguishable from my real family. Because these things have never hurt me, I never built up any sort of scaremongering or fear of them. I think from about 1963, that was my first experience of being taken off the Earth into a craft.
And what did that? Can you remember what that looked like?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was not a traditional Hollywood type flying saucer. It was a teardrop-shaped craft. If you can imagine a teardrop, like a water drop, but with the blunt end going forward and the pointy end at the back.
Wow! And one of the aliens wanted to be your mother, or said that she was your mother, and that must have been quite confusing. Because I mean, how old would you have been then?
Very young.
Very young. So that's what I mean. It's quite a difficult thing to comprehend. And you had your human mother.
Yes.
And that did lead to a bit of confusion there for you, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
And in fact, you called your human mother Daddy for a while.
Correct.
Because you couldn't work out why you had...
Well, why would I need two mothers? Exactly. So I already had a mother, so this person can't be my mother, it must be my daddy. And then as you get older, you realise that certain things are not acceptable in human society. So I stopped saying daddy and mummy and got the words right, and learnt not to be open, not to discuss it, because outside of the very close family, most people can't handle it.
And so this progressed through your childhood, and quite early on you lost your virginity to one of these aliens who, now this is quite a confused part of the story here, because from what I read, the alien turned themselves into the woman from the Fry's Turkish Delight advert.
Yes, this is holographic, so I wouldn't have actually lost my virginity. This is a holographic image. We think we have some wonderful technology here on this earth, but the technology that I've seen far surpasses anything that we have here, or at least anything that the military tell us they have. This was a holographic experience.
How old were you?
That would be about 1965.
What age were you then?
I would be about 5 or 6.
You lost your virginity at 6 years old?
No, I didn't say that. It was a holographic representation.
So you had a sexual encounter?
With exactly,
at 6 years old?
Absolutely, yes.
So age doesn't matter to them?
No, because it's about experience, it's about your soul. I know in the West we don't really understand souls, but in the East and in the Bible, they actually understand souls very, very clearly.
You went on to have non-holographic sex with an alien called a lion lady. Mm-hmm. Yes. And although you weren't attracted to her, you said that wasn't really what it was about. It wasn't like what we have here, where there's sort of, for the majority of people, there has to be a sort of attraction. It was for other means.
This is an incredibly difficult subject for most people to understand, and I fully appreciate that most people can't get their head around it. We're talking about creatures that have the ability to enter your mind, to go into your mind and give you images, and to make you think one thing when actually you think another. So I think these creatures would have actually come into my mind and made me appear to love them. because otherwise you wouldn't actually have a sexual reaction with anybody unless you felt something for them. So I think it's more to do with that than anything else.
Does that not bother you that they're doing that?
Well,
I mean, I'd be quite upset if someone came into my mind and convinced me that I fancied them.
Yeah, the thing is, I've seen these creatures ever since I was very young, from a very early age. And when you realise that humanity is not the only thing in this galaxy, in this whole
That was a UFO.
Well, if it was,
only a fly.
It could land on the White House lawn, couldn't it? When you get used to these creatures and you realise that mankind is literally just a pinprick in a massive constellation.
Okay, so the first thing that really caught me in his interview was the fact that he actually saw a face while he was in the womb of his mother. But again, it is a fascinating story. And again, it is a second story where we have someone who says they are a lifelong experiencer. His started way earlier than anyone else we've interviewed. Than anyone else that we've heard. But nonetheless, we have a situation where it looks like children are being brought up steadily to accept the idea of alien contact so that they are not afraid when the time comes that they have to have sex and procreate with ET. In a way, for me, there is something really just not so nice about this. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just looking at all these stories from a really cynical point of view, but to take a kid and train them basically to accept who you are just so that later on you could have sex with them. I mean, for us here on Earth, that's what we call predators. Isn't that a predatory act, basically? This has been episode number 27, and you know what? That's food for thought. You guys really think about that, because I just find it, from my human perspective, that situation is just not cool. I'm checking out. I'll catch you on the next episode. Ciao.